السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. أما بعد. First and foremost, I would like to seek forgiveness from all of the mashayikh and scholars that are present. I am definitely the most unworthy and the person that is the most ill-fit to say anything. But I have to extend my gratitude to Sheikh Jibali and our Sheikh Sadiq, who made this possible, especially Sheikh Jibali, who pushed strongly for this survey and for this research that will take place. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the bio you see in the book is a different Dr. Khan. I didn't study medicine, I didn't do many of these things. I just went to Africa, studied being over there, and came back. So the bio is not correct. It's a simple bio. I went and I studied Sharia, came back to the States and worked in the States. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time discussing the different theological debates that surround a person's inability to grasp. I think the speakers before have done a tremendous job, and the speakers after will do the same. I'm just going to give you an introduction, and then I'm going to focus on the survey that we did. So the first thing is that the paper that you have in front of you is divided into two parts. The first part are historical accounts that led to shaping the current social climate. So I'm born in America. I was born in Dallas, Texas. I lived overseas. I lived in Saudi. I lived in England. I lived in South Africa. So I've had the opportunity of experiencing American culture. I've also had the opportunity of experiencing Eastern culture as well. And one of the things that make the minds of our American youth, what are cultivated, is shaped by the culture around them. Which means the Netflix they watch, the TikToks they see, the Snapchat that they see on different social media platforms that they're engrossing themselves in. That is what's actually doing the tarbiyah. The mother and father, the Masjid, the Imam, is only getting a few minutes from them, a few hours a week. So they're being cultivated by the American culture. And I think it's important to understand why the American culture is the way it is, to be able to understand how to effectively solve some of the problems that we are facing. So the first part of the paper just discusses on how we got here. The second part, and this is what I'm going to focus the most on this presentation, is the survey and findings. So now, just briefly about the survey was conducted in around January, February of 2020. To be exact, it was February of 2020. Now this happens a month before COVID. And what I want you to know, and as you are going through the paper, and as we are exploring each of the charts, I'm going to focus heavily on the charts. What I want you to know is that every number and every statistic that I'm about to share with you, you may look at it and feel disheartened, and you may feel perplexed and shook. But unfortunately, the reality is that since COVID has happened, the situation has become far worse. And if we're able to even get back to this statistic, if we're able to even get back to where we are a year and a half ago, it will be a great accomplishment for us. So just to keep that in mind. We surveyed 1,276 youth. It was actually a little over 1,300. From there, they were from 60 cities in 25 states. At the end, we went through each of the responses, filtered them out to see some of the repeats, some of the ones that may not be accurate. And we stopped at 1,111 for the research. We used youth from the ages of 13 and 29. Now, the three age groups are defined differently in this paper. 13 to 17 is referred to as high school youth. 18 to 22 is referred to as college youth. And 23 to 29 is referred to as young adults. As the Sheikh has mentioned, the last 11 to 15 years of mine, my focus has been behind high school, college, and young professionals. whether it's Houston, Chicago, England, Toronto, regardless of the place, my focus has strongly been behind youth. So even, you mentioned Plato Masjid, even when I operate in my masjid, I have a very defined niche that I have to focus on. So everything you're hearing and seeing is based on this network that has been developed over the years. We took help from different MSAs, different masjids, different youth organizations like YM, ALM, and different groups just to get a vantage point. Now the survey had 19 questions. By no means the survey is perfect. There's a lot of room for improvement. This is just meant to start a discussion, and I hope many from you will take this on and carry this forward. This is just a step into the room, and there's far more to see, and there's far more to gauge. The survey possesses, now the survey had 19 questions, and then you had 26 factors that the youth would select which factors, for example, smoking, pornography, masturbation, parental pressure, social pressure, all of these things related, whichever caused them the most religious struggles, they would click it. Finally, at the end of the survey, you had a comment box. And over here, the youth were allowed to express whatever they felt we missed. And I would just like to mention that in the survey, there was no question regarding LGBTQ. And this is going to be an important point later on. So in the survey, in its actual self, there was no question about LGBTQ, and that was intentionally done. We wanted to see how many people felt that this was the focal and biggest problem in their faith, who would take the time out and actually iterate it and write it out and say that this is our struggle. Otherwise, if I put the question, the one who may feel like it's a small struggle or a clear struggle or may not even think about it, they may opt for it. But to truly measure how important of a case this was, we gave it up to the youth to respond on their own will. Would they mention this or would they not? Anyway, just to give you a little bit of history. American culture is strongly shaped by Christian European influences. And Americans being allergic to religion at some aspects deals specifically with the aspect of how they experience Christianity. So in the paper, I take you through the journey, and I explain to you how, if you can see from Pope Stephen VI, from the year 896, this is the first corrupt pope of the 8 corrupt popes, the 8 most corrupt popes. The man was pope for 1 year, but he made it to the list. To Pope Clement, this is a span of close to 700 years, 600 years plus. And in 600 years, almost every century, you have the most corrupt popes that existed. For example, you had the Borgia Pope, who openly kept mistresses while he was a pope, and openly swindled money from the treasures and the coffers, and preferred his own children and his family members. So Christians in Europe were largely against the concept of the corruption that they were seeing. And when these people began to migrate, and you see that in 1532, where you see the last most corrupt of their popes, Copernicus begins to challenge the church now. Now, why does he challenge the church? Why at this point? Not because of the fact that no one else before had the audacity, but it was because of the fact that enough cracks were there in Christianity that in order to drop the whole concept of Christianity, it was very easy now, because now if you told them God isn't true, they look at the people of God and they say, yeah, if this person claims to be a person of God, he doesn't have the actions for it, therefore religion as a whole must be a faith. This is the point that I'm going to come back to later on in the presentation. Because how Christians lost faith in their religion because of the religious leaders is what's exactly happening to us. And again, like I said, these statistics, they're just to give you an idea. They're a year and a half old, they're pre-COVID, and we need to do this again post-COVID to gain a more accurate idea of what's going on. You have a person by the name of John Locke. He's known as the father of enlightenment. Now it's very interesting. Deen, we call it, we refer to the deen as nur. and they refer to secularism as enlightenment, to grasp the same concept. John Locke, he becomes a strong influencer for the founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and they shape America in very similar vision of John Locke. Now again, why is this coming? Because they're frustrated with the malpractices of the Christian leaders and the inability of the Christians to explain the religion to other Christians. Keep in mind, Martin Luther in the 1500s is the first person to start this initiative to translate the Bible from Latin into English. Up until then, you could not read the Bible. You have to go to a pope or a priest. Anyway, I don't want to give a history lesson on this. It was the distance that caused the cracks, the corruption, and finally, when the ideas were presented, it was very easy to convince them. Anyway, you can read more about it. On to the survey. My next few slides are going to be going through page 163, and I'm just going to be touching on each one of the slides, and then inshallah in the Q&A, if you have more questions, you can ask. And I just want to give you a little idea on everything that we have done in this. The first thing is that, as I mentioned, the age range. We had 13 to 17 out of the 1,100, 30% were high schoolers. 51% of ours were college students. And 18% were young professionals or young adults in the survey. Now, you see all of these words over here. Some are a little larger, some are a little smaller. Now, based on the 1,100 people, these were the things that people clicked the most or wrote the most, and they mentioned as struggles. As you can see, one of the first words is a hafiz, which reminds us, and this is a secondary point, and I hope that someone can elucidate afterwards, I believe we've done a great disservice that we have produced a plethora of hafaz, and then we have no system for the retention. My experience, I run a hafaz association in Dallas. We have over 150 hafaz. And my experience with these hafaz and the hafaz that I work with is that 95% are unable to read the Quran from their memory because they haven't touched the Quran all year long. I have met multiple hafaz who don't touch the Quran after their hifz is done. And I think it's a great disservice that we keep on pushing out these hafaz on these young children. We put this responsibility on them without truly preparing them to understand what they're getting. And at the same time, and how do we maintain this and keep this with them? So hifz was a big problem. Then you see masturbation, you see food, the zabiha, non-zabiha discussion. Zabiha, non-zabiha, is that a discussion that you guys do all the time? Can I get a raise of hands? MashaAllah, those brothers don't get over here. You're lucky. You'll see over here, there's identity on the left over there. Muslims being able to be proud of their Muslim identity. Our Haris Patels from into Harry Potter's, as our brother Hazrat Usman says, Kareem Chaudhry turns into clam chowder. Muhammad becomes Mo. Because I'm embarrassed of my identity. I'm embarrassed of my hijab. I had an interesting discussion with the CEO of Matrimonial App. But I had a discussion with him, and we spoke about how majority of the sisters actually began taking their hijabs off when they made matrimonial profiles, because there were many brothers who would swipe left and decline them just because of the fact that they're wearing hijab. And something to reflect and think about, the Islamophobia, forget the Islamophobia, others present to us, we have our own internal Islamophobia that we need to check. Anyway, now the survey also showed, we asked them how often do you go to the masjid. Again, this is pre-COVID. You have kids over here, weekly Jum'ah is at 40%. At my masjid, alhamdulillah, Isha, Maghrib, you get 300 plus people for Isha, Maghrib, and Fajr. 300 to 400 people, depending on the prayer, depending on the season. Jum'ah, first Jum'ah would have about 2,000 people, second about 1,500 people. Youth, I would see easily over 100 youth after Jum'ah. Currently, I see about 15 to 20. Our salah has been reduced. Where we used to have 60, 70 youth at any given time at the masjid. Now we have about 10. Just to give you an idea, most of the youth at this current moment are not even going for Jum'ah, because now they've become used to missing Jum'ah. And once the identity of Jum'ah is gone in a Muslim, then they're just like that Christian that no longer goes to church on Sundays. And they're just Christian by name. Is there supposed to be a beat to this, or? No. Now, the biggest issue that we saw youth mention was struggling in prayer. Struggling to pray 5 times in concentration. 4 days ago, I had a community member call me who studied from our masjid, and he said to him that, Dad, I don't pray because you pray and you have anger issues. You pray and you lie. You pray and you treat mom badly. Prayer hasn't made you a better human being. And I don't do any of these things and I don't pray. The inner hypocrisy of constantly focusing on the ritual aspect and ignoring the spiritual aspect. Teaching kids to pray, but why do they pray? We don't explain to them. Music is haram. Why is it haram? We can't explain to them. Little kid, 7-year-old girl, 8-year-old girl, 10-year-old girl, 12-year-old girl, you're putting a hijab on her without telling her the reason of why. And we are no longer back home. It's not Samirna wa ta'na anymore. It's Samirna wa asayna. The kids, that's the first thing they do. Why? You might hate that question, but that's what happens when you come to America. That's the American dream. The why. And the ability to answer that. And if you cannot answer that, then it's your responsibility in your community to employ imams or youth directors or youth coordinators who can fulfill that responsibility. If you're unable to do it, go home and focus on this aspect. Now, another thing was that the majority of the youth who struggled to pray were also youth who struggled to concentrate. It was pretty much the exact percentage, which showed that concentration in prayer directly linked to people praying more consistently. And this can easily be accomplished by running 2 hours. I've given some solutions inside there as well, and because of the time, I'll just say one solution for each of these things. To host annual or biannual seminars for 2 to 3 hours, nothing too long, not too short, but comprehensive. You begin with Allahu Akbar and you finish at Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Don't focus on the elements of, should I raise my hand, should I put it down, Ameen Bijal, Ameen. No, that's secondary. Tell them what it means when they raise their hand and stand before their Allah and they say, Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. What does it mean to talk to their Allah? Give that realization. When a kid does something wrong, we take their cell phone away. The kid's going to get older and get their cell phone back. We as parents, what do we do with youth? When we see them do something wrong, we take it away. We take their keys away, phone away, until how long? The fact that you have to take their phone away means you failed as a parent. The fact that you didn't teach them how to overcome, and I give an example of a child. If you put these little roadblocks by stairs, the kid doesn't fall down the stairs. But eventually that kid's going to get tall enough to jump over and he'll fall down. So do you just keep on making a bigger wall? You teach them how to walk. What we do is when we want to protect our kids, instead of teaching them how to walk, we just build a bigger wall. Instead of teaching them how to deal with women, we just build another wall. Don't talk to girls. You're 21. Don't talk to them. 21? Get married. Why aren't you talking to girls? It's a paradox. Anyway, you'll notice that sisters struggle more with prayer than brothers. Obviously, you have the issue of menstruation. You have the issue of the inability to pray at times. So it becomes difficult to remain consistent when you're taking time off every single month. Sisters struggle the most with prayer. And again, we need to create more programs and environments like this. Pornography. 80% of the youth that answered, 80% of the people that said they struggled with pornography, not 80% of the people that answered, 80% of the people that said they struggled with pornography were male. 20% women. Pornography, when I say pornography, most people in the crowd might think it's porn website. pornography can be seen on TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram. And pornography doesn't necessarily mean being completely nude. Anything that is going to incite this provocation, this emotional incitement, all leads to this. So you see this high struggle with pornography. And I mean, it's great for us Imams to ask when was the last time we gave a khutbah on this. You know, when we asked about the LGBTQ issue, and over 10% of the youth that responded to the survey on their own mentioned that either being gay or sympathizing with why Islam doesn't allow people to be gay was the main reason they cannot connect with the faith. And then I asked on Instagram to thousands of people, when was the last time you heard a khutbah on this topic? And everyone said, it's been over 4 years, or we've never heard this khutbah. And it's a question, how do we solve a problem that we never talk about? How can we solve a problem that we never talk about? Our khutbahs are basically, the opening a random book and speaking. Do we check Twitter, what's trending? Do we see what's going on in the minds? Do we check our kids and our youth and hear what's going on? Do we ask them their opinion? Do we reach out to our community? We don't. And then our khutbahs no longer remain in effect. They don't have that weight anymore. Because we're speaking what we want to speak, we're not speaking what they want to hear. Anyway. Struggle with masturbation, as you can see, is pretty much the exact same. There's an interesting statistic that as we measured the ages of the kids, so you have high school, college, and young adults, pornography was the highest in high school. Then college, it became less. And then in young professionals, young adults, it became even less than that. So pornography reduced as you got older. But you know what was interesting? Masturbation increased. Masturbation increased higher in that age, the older they got. Which showed that pornography was no longer the problem, the habits that they lived became reasons of their marital struggles afterwards. And again, something to think about, something to talk about. Relationships among the youth. I'm guessing that's my 5 minutes. So I have to. Relationships among the youth. The college age group has the biggest struggle. High schoolers have a struggle, young professionals, young adults, not as much. College students. Which means that it's imperative for Imams and scholars to visit campuses. I was with Mufti Mohammed in South Africa about 5 months ago. One of the things Mufti Mohammed told me, when I told him I work with the universities, he said that's where the mind is shaped. That's their place of conditioning the mind. And if we're not going to go and bring our narrative, and we're not available there, not because the Masjid pays us, and not because of the fact that it's my job, it's because we have to. It's because it's our responsibility. LGBTQ views, 1 in 10 youth, they reported this on their own. We didn't ask them. They mentioned it on their own. Which means that my statistic is far low. It's much lower. Though the study did not focus on this aspect, it was apparent from the comments that this was a growing struggle. Why can't we be gay? Why can't someone else be gay? Questions of understanding the whole nature versus nurture argument. So a kid that, it's haram, it's not going to help. Why is it haram? Why is it not allowed to have that discussion? Being a Muslim girl, the sisters struggled on a ridiculous level. And the worst thing was that only 25% of the males thought that women struggled with their faith. That means our sons and our boys don't acknowledge the struggle of their sisters. That means our husbands don't understand the struggle. And we know Allah changes His own Imam, makes Salah forgiven. Even though Salah is not forgiven at any other place. But in this place, Allah changes His Imam. Teaches us to change our Imam as well at home. Anyway. Mental illness. I have these workshops. Our Masjid has a Sakina service where we have therapists and counselors on call. You can call anytime. Suicide cases, drug abuse, children pulling knives on their parents. These are all cases from the last few months. These are also existing in your community as well. We just don't know about it. It exists in everyone's community. We're just not aware of it. Okay, this one is something that you guys want to know. One of the biggest factors of kids losing interest in religion is masjid politics. Can I get an amen? Allahu Akbar to that? Takbir! These guys didn't agree. Must be board members over there. When an imam leads a community, I've been in communities where I've been part of it, I've been in communities where I have to leave. And I have noticed, my personal experience is that once the imam leaves, those kids stop coming to the masjid. And then you need a new person to rebuild that relationship. Whatever you do, try your best to mitigate that. You leaving as an imam is not your ego problem. It costs the faith of other people in the community. So the next time something comes, where you feel like just quitting and putting up something. Okay. This was a big reason. Role of imams and scholars. A lot of youth, especially women, criticize scholars and how the scholars react. I would encourage you all to read the section, because high schoolers, college, and adults, they all had different reasons why they didn't connect to scholars. And I think it's very important for us to read, listen, and maybe try to make that better. Majority of the people that have problems with imams are our sisters. And rightfully so. You can't just talk about them and go, oh, it's a sister section. It's only the corner of the masjid anyway. We have to be attentive and listen. And again, I know there's a lot, but if you want to see the survey, or you want to have more questions, or need any help, you can always email me, and then inshallah will help. That's my red light, so I guess I have to stop right now. Just
So we're gonna have questions after few talks from the sponsors. So Dr. Rahma, inshallah, will be the first presenter here for the sponsor.
المبدأ كل واحد كله هذا صغير اللي عندك بجوز أكبر بجوز أصغر كمان يا سلام بدك.
I just wanted to quickly mention, first of all, two things I forgot to mention. The survey size that we conducted is actually the largest survey of American Muslim youth done, at least to my knowledge. It's also a larger sample size than what Pew did. And in there, I actually contest their results and disagree with Pew's result that 23% of Muslims leave Islam. That's there as well. The second thing is that, just to give you an idea in the presentation, I think you had a chance, how do we solve it? What is something that we can do? So basically in Dallas, there's this organization called Roots, and they started a queer space concept, where they began servicing Muslims in a place that was non-judgmental. We took that idea and we worked on growing it. So we have a youth lounge, about 4,200 square foot, a prayer area, ping pong table, TV, couches, pool, a bunch of games for the kids. And this isn't a masjid, so it's only populated by youth. Parents have the trust, so they'll send their kids. Kids will spend the night over there. It's the only place where someone can bring their non-Muslim friends. It's the only place, it's an honest question, every one of the youth that you have has non-Muslim friends. How do you reach them? It's not in your masjid. Okay, what about the Muslim who's never stepped into the masjid? How do you pull them, how do you get him in? What about that youngster who's drunk right now at 3 a.m. in the morning? What are you going to do with him? We need these type of tarbiyah hospitals in every city. And we need all the masjids to help support one of these. And these will nurture the youth and instill them back into the respective masjids. I'll end with that. I'm already emphasized.
So please, brothers, can stop here, and please, we have 11 minutes. We need to use the mic, so I will wave my hand if you will see that. Okay? Please, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. My question is actually not for Mufti Wasim, so I'm sorry I'm taking your time. But actually, my question is about the fundraising sponsors that we are seeing at charity organizations. As an imam, I get requests from organizations wanting to do fundraising. A few months ago, I got a request from an organization, and I quickly went and looked at their paperwork, which were 3 years old, and saw that this organization had 33% administrative costs. So my request is that when charity organizations are coming and displaying the kind of projects that they're doing, we would also like to see their finances. A little bit glimpse of it, you know, this is how much we are doing, this is what we are doing to keep our expenses low, because at some point it seems that some organizations are basically salaries, expenses are first, and the projects are second. So this particular organization, 33% of their money went into to administrative costs, and the rest of the 300-some thousand that they have raised in that particular year, there wasn't a single detail in their declared tax papers as to where that money went. Now, we all know that it's very easy to donate 2 boxes of food and take 20 pictures and show them and show how good work we're doing, but to actually show, you know, how much we are spending on what projects would actually be very helpful, so that we can actually feel comfortable putting this organization in front of our community and saying that your money is actually going towards the project and not towards just the administrative costs.
I take this one as a comment more than a question, right? It's a comment. Yes. I think it's a good comment. It's absolutely valid comment. We need to have transparency, and we need to have even this financial to be even audited. Let's move to the questions. Yes.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Imam Bikini and in Plano. I'm so proud to be a neighbor for Mufti Wasim, very close friend of mine, the dearest friend of mine. And I want to say that we are proud of you in Collin County. And my question is, Mufti Wasim, for the people who know him, he started a wonderful project, Isra Foundation. So what's unique about Isra Foundation? That it's not a masjid, it is a youth center. And Mufti Wasim sometimes, he tells me that sometimes I should be out, to let them, socialize. So he started a wonderful project that I wanted him to shed the light on that and to share his experience, that I'm sure that if every community has a place like Isra Foundation, I think it will make a big difference in the life of them. Mufti Wasim is able to collect in just one day around 150 youth and college students, which is something that we do not see a lot. Please share with us your experience in Isra Foundation and how this experience will, inshallah, benefit you.
Sheikh, just 1 second. By the way, the Sheikh Jibali I mentioned in the beginning pushed me for the surveys now. So he gets the ajr for everything. May Allah reward him, and Brother Sadiq, and the whole team, inshallah. One of my friends, who's also a local Imam, Imam Rahman Bashir, once gave me advice that I never forgot. He told me, he said, I was really young when I did that. Super cocky, probably still around a little bit. But even more at that time. He said to me, so Wasim, the community doesn't care about the Imam that knows the most. They care about the Imam who cares the most. Is Arabic here or no? But what I have learned, so I came from a Violandi background, a Darwin background. And in the traditional system, there's a heavy influence on tarbiyah. And usually the Umari Bizat, the stricter persona. What I have learned in my experience and through a lot of mistakes, you're talking about all the good stuff you see. I made a ton of mistakes on this journey. I've learned there was no one to teach me. I've never been to a youth program growing up in America. I grew up, I was born here. I didn't have a young scholar. All my scholars spoke a different language. What I learned from the kids over and over and over again, akhlaq is priceless. فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُ وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. The ability to let your guard down. You can either be Mufti Wasim with them, or you can be Wasim with them. If you're Mufti Wasim, you'll get their respect, but you won't get their private life and what's going on in their life. But if you're Wasim with them, you'll know what their struggles are. You'll know who's got a masturbation problem, who has a pornography problem, who has a suicidal problem, who has what problems in their homes. That's when you lower your guard down. So my advice to you all would be, again, to Imam Rahman Bashir once told me, say salam to every person in your community. Start talking to them. When I sit in a community and I go and I visit, I look for that kid that other kids are surrounding, and I go after him. And I talk to him and build a relationship with him. And that's the prophetic way. The Prophet grabs who? Sa'd ibn Mu'adh. Sa'd ibn Ubadah. What is he doing? He's getting the top people. What was it said about Sa'd ibn Mu'adh radiallahu anhu? When Sa'd ibn Umayyah went into his garden and gave da'wah, and Sa'd ibn Mu'adh radiallahu anhu sent another person, and he said, I believe it was Ubadah bin Samit, and he said, go talk to him, I don't want to engage. When Ubadah bin Samit, if I remember correctly, he accepted Islam, he comes back and he tells Mus'ab ibn Umayyah, he says, there's one more man, if you get him to accept Islam, the whole tribe will accept. Sa'd bin Mu'adh accepted Islam. It's the only entire tribe of Medina that accepted Islam the same day. Focus on the movers and shakers and the influencers. I'm on TikTok, which I hope you can laugh about it, it's fine. I look for those TikToker kids who have hundreds and thousands of followers and are drunk. I shared a video on TikTok. I won't say the story though.
This question is not just directed to you, specifically to all of you. I got three questions. First question is, the kids, when they go there, that's because of their fathers, and fathers force them to go there. And the teachers force them to do the things that they're being forced to do. What are you doing to put the love for them to keep coming afterwards, but they don't have that force anymore, and they have that force? That's the first one. The second question is, what things are you teaching them for the Aqidah, so that they'll be firm on the faith through all the tribulations and trials, and firm and strong on the faith all the way to the end, and the last word will be la ilaha illallah, without changing the faith. What kind of things are you teaching them to be strong on the faith? The third one, I think you might have answered already. What are you teaching them to put the love towards you specifically? Love their faith, love their subject.
First question was, what am I doing to bring the love of Allah? Most of my kids are college students. They come on their own. And people see me crazy. I have board members in my masjid whose kids come to my house frequently. But the board members don't want their kids to be that religious. So they tell them, don't go that often. And wallahi, I'm not lying. The kids tell their parents, we're going to a Hindu's house. And they come to my house. They fired. They didn't say which masjid. But anyway, the point is that it's this time to spend with them. 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, I go out with the kids. I'm not a wealthy person, but I'll be damned if I let them pay. It doesn't matter, man. I reach out to the kids, I take them for coffee, I take them for a little help. Like, they need money, I'm there for them. It doesn't matter what my situation is. And that's all I can say, care for them. And as far as teaching them Aqidah, dude, I'm just here to teach them about Allah. That's what their Imam is there for. I'm not working on the high class people, I'm working on the people that are on the verge of kufr, or that they hang around with kafar, and that's entering their heart. That's the field that I work in. Please,
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Mohammed Ali from Memphis. Thank you so much for being here and speaking. Very, very comfortable. So, as a Imam, so for me, I'm seeing we have maybe all of generations. As you know, many Imams they have their generation, and now we have the youth generation in America. So most of them, if you don't go like to school and experience the life here, it's hard to understand the part of the kids. So now what is your best advice for the imam? How to be more involved with the kids or the youth to help them because they need it. But sometimes you just waiting them at the masjid and they're not coming to the masjid. Is that not right?
Brother, that's a very good question. As an imam, what can you do? It's important to understand as an imam, you can't do everything. And your board needs to understand that, and your community needs to understand that. There is no way a 40-year-old imam is connected with a 15-year-old kid. It's not possible. Very rare circumstances. And you can't make a ruling on the Shabbat. The reality is that I'm 30 right now. In 5 years, I need to let go of my youth influence and give it to a younger scholar. The problem with us is that an imam spot pulls up and everyone applies for it. We don't strategically sit down and say, oh, you know what, you're going to be good at this. You know what, Memphis needs an imam. We have this person. This was a title that Shaykh Zakariya Khan rahimahullah and other great scholars of the past. They would take their students and deploy them in different places to effectively cause a change. We don't have that system. We just go for it. The reality is we just go for the highest salary. And the reality is that khidmah aspect is not there. And if the khidmah is not there, the barakah is not there. If the barakah is not there, no one's walking through the door. And if the khidmah is there, the barakah is there, the ikhlas is there, then those doors will be full. But also understand your limitation. Hire someone young. They don't have to be a scholar. I have kids in my community. They're getting paid $12 an hour at CVS. Talented kids. Man, Masjid should give them 15 and bring them into the Masjid. We don't think like that. We think, oh, they should do it for free. We don't put our money where our mouth is. Members, mihrab, we'll build it. Imam will come and talk about my raise. When was the last time you asked about the youth budget? I emphatically, when I work with the budget, I tell them, tell me the youth budget before you tell me my salary. I need to know that you're going to drop money when the time comes. And you're going to bankroll it. And if you can't, don't worry about the youth. Because you need to put, as I say, as a cake, but you have to do something.
So, sister, inshallah, you're going to ask questions. The microphone is just right.
You have to turn it off.
I can hear your question.
So what piece of advice would you give to a female youth director and someone who started an MSA on the college campus? And how would you recommend that we reach out to the youth and the college students?
So the first question, what advice would I give a female youth director? I don't think I'm the best person to advise a female youth director. I think that as far as how to connect the youth and market with them, you have to be on social media. If you're not on Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and not that you kind of say like for any other reason, but for the sake of Allah. Don't slide into DMs and none of that stuff. For the sake of Allah. Unless you're on it, you can't understand what they're going through. You don't know what the trend is. You don't know what they've been seeing the whole week. So it's important that you remain on social media. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that what I learned from the sisters in my community is that they envy the fact that the boys can see and they get to spend time with you. And I think that Masjids allowing that environment and funding these coffees or these dinners or these lunches with the female youth coordinating director is important for that bonding. It takes years to build trust. It takes a long time, and Masjids want to see a result in 6 months. It doesn't happen. So I strongly believe in the interpersonal relationship. I strongly believe on checking up on kids. I strongly believe in knowing what's going on in their home. I don't just look after that one kid, their entire sibling, their whole family. Because someone is going through some struggle, and that's going to be your way in to convince a person. So that would be my suggestion on this.
Jazakallah khair, so these now the lunch is ready for you.
Assalamu alaikum.